We're putting the band back together.
Forget it. No way.
We're on a mission from God.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Oh, this is gonna be fun. We can stay up late, swapping manly stories, and in the morning,
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you stay categorical?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
I can see Russia from my house.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
We drink off water bottles.
No, a proof is a proof. What kind of proof? It's a proof.
here come the players. Champions, 1989. Canadians win the Stanley Cup.
El Presidente, El Perfecto. Sidney Crosby, the golden goal. And the Blue Jays have repeated as World Series champions. Touch them all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.
Welcome to the Edge of Tom Foolery.
I have these notes, so I gotta say I'm just fired up to be here today. Pretty cool. Wow!
Hey, what's going on, people? My name is Bruce Mackey, and this is the Edge of Tom Foolery. We are excited you tuned in tonight, and joining me, the mayor of Ivanhoe himself, Mr. Roberto Morris. Bobby, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bruce. How are you doing?
Oh, living the dream, my friend, living the dream.
Excellent.
And joining us from the palatial studios in Calgary, Alberta, the replacement nominee for Mayor Nenshi. His name is Stephen Jonathan Haidt.
Oh, Brucey, I'm so excited to run this little town we got out here. It'll be fine. We've got some stuff in the ground north of us that we think you're going to want over there. So this is going to be great. We're loving it.
Did Nenshi give you the heads up that he was going to kind of take the
He sent me, he's on TikTok. So he sent me one of those, told me he wasn't going to do it. And so I appreciated that.
Hey, I'm on this new thing called, what is it?
Marco Polo. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just new to it today, and I'm sending everyone messages. It's fantastic. If you've never tuned into the show before, we talk about the sports, we talk about the politics, we talk about the music, and a lot of other tomfoolery. And tonight we are excited to have a guest on the show. Really excited, and it's Ryan Walter. Just to listen.
Up on the glass. Ryan Walter running into his look out here. Gonna go at it, I believe. O'Reilly, Bob. These two have been gathering with each other for the last few seconds.
Interview Ryan Walter against the Bulldogs and stick on the ici.
Mesdames, Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, accueillons nos Canadiens.
Well, there we go. It's my privilege to welcome a Stanley Cup winner and former Montreal Canadian, former Vancouver Canuck, and Washington Capital, Ryan Walter. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Bob.
We are excited to have you. Now, Steve is from Calgary. Do you have any remorse or any issues with anyone from Calgary?
No, Steve's my buddy. He's my buddy. Come on.
Good.
I heard
we're done. We're done, Steve.
I heard BC and Alberta have this thing going back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
You know what?
That's true.
It's a problem. Yeah. My mother-in-law is born in New West. So I got to be a little careful with how I treat my BCers.
Didn't she go to high school with the guy from Beachcombers?
I was trying to ask her about that. And there's a lot of, I'm not saying all BCers tell stories, but I feel like there's some, there's some questions. I'll just say that.
So Ryan, we're excited to have you. And we just want to hear your story, talk about your journey of faith. And maybe we can go back a bit. You played hockey in BC, were drafted second overall in the NHL in we won't say what year. We won't say that, but second overall. Tell us about that process, the draft, what the draft was like back then.
Well, it's actually, could be a very mundane story, but it's actually an interesting story. And it's one that I don't know if you guys know, because we were not supposed to tell anybody. That draft actually didn't take place. So it took place. We got drafted. But here's what's interesting. Obviously, the WHA was was trying to steal all the NHL players in that year. And all of the top 5 to 10 picks that year were all signed before the draft. So it was like the most anticlimactic draft. Like Bobby Smith had already signed with Minnesota. Yeah. I'd already signed with Washington, so it was crazy. And so we were in Montreal, you know, and my mom and dad and I were sworn to secrecy, right? And it was the old, okay, you know, Minnesota takes Bobby Smith, and here we go. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that? Yeah.
Wow.
You wonder if how much is known behind the scenes. But back then, of course, the WHA, Bobby Hall, he's a Belleville boy.
Yeah.
And he made the jump back then. So when you got drafted, what was going through? You kind of knew that you were going to go there. What did you have expectation that you were going to actually play the next year, or were you going to return to junior, or what was your expectation?
Yeah, great question. No, I'm going to make that team, and I'm going to have impact right away. That was my expectation. And they, you know, I was pretty fortunate. I wasn't going to the Montreal Canadiens. I wasn't going to, you know, a top 5 or 10 team. I mean, they needed talent. They needed young players to come in. Max McNabb, the GM, and I loved Max. Max actually had to draft at that point players that could play in Philly. And when I say play in Philly, I'm humbly careful here, because if you couldn't compete at that level and weren't ready to compete at that level, you know, you couldn't help their team. Because if you think of all the teams, you know, you got the Flyers, Boston, Montreal was tough. Like, all these teams were tough teams. So it was an interesting time to come into our game.
What was your first goal? What team did you score your first goal against?
Scored against LA, game 2. I think it was Rogie Vachon, but there's an old name.
Yeah.
And in my first face-off, you know, it was a great story, actually. I'll flip it to you guys off air. I tell the story and I build a little principle around it, but my first face-off was in Chicago in my first game against Stan Mikita.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. Very cool. Now we'll back it up a little bit. You played in the Pee Wee tournament in Quebec, and you also played in the World Juniors. And the World Juniors, there was some young guy on the team, 16-year-old, no name really. And maybe you can tell about the World Junior. Who was your teammate in the World Juniors?
Yeah, that was crazy. You know, when you think of Wayne Gretzky as a 16-year-old turning 17. So what happened was there was a training camp in the summer in Toronto, and that's when the team was really picked. You know, I mean, they made adjustments a little before World Juniors, but and there's this skinny little kid, and you know, we all knew of Gretzky, but he could hardly, like, you know, he could hardly take a wrist shot. Like his wrist shot wouldn't work because he wasn't strong enough. His slap shot was brilliant. And so, you know, he not only makes the team, but he leads the whole tournament in scoring. Like,
wow,
just incredible.
That's cool. We're going to put you on for a little trivia. Are you up for a little trivia?
Well, I'm gonna rely on Steve and Bob to help me out here.
We got your back. We got your ass. Don't worry.
All right, we got a little bit of trivia. In the 1978 draft, how many NHL teams were drafting?
Oh, great question. Great question.
You can phone a friend. Do you know, Steve?
Yeah, no idea. Steve, Bob?
I was not born in 1978.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I'm less help than, say, Bobby would be.
Bob?
No idea. 16?
18.
Okay.
In that draft, how many Canadians were drafted in the first round of the 18?
Great question. Quite a few in those years.
If you said all, you would be correct.
Nice.
All 18, eh? That was interesting. Also, we'll go, who has more NHL experience? Laurie Boschman, Ryan Walter, or Mark Osborne?
That's a good one. Bob, Steve, what do you think?
It's got to be you, Ryan. I mean, you're my man. Today you are. I mean, next week it'll be Ozzy, but today you are. Yeah.
Exactly. Those two guys had great careers, though.
Yeah. You know what? Boschy had 6 more games than you did.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh.
Yeah. They were all within, and the last one, just because we're going here from Belleville, who led Team USA in scoring at your World Juniors? Yeah, it was Team USA, and it was a Belleville boy.
Really?
Yeah.
Team USA.
Yeah, and his brother was a coach in the NHL and actually coached out in Vancouver. It was Bobby Crawford.
Bobby Crawford. How about that? Yeah. I wouldn't have got that either.
There
That's
you go.
Great.
Well, we like to have tough questions here. So talk about your journey of faith. You're in you're out in Washington. You're a rookie, and actually, you were the youngest captain of the Washington Capitals. How old were you when you get the captaincy?
Yeah, so I was drafted as a 19-year-old, played there as 2021, and so would have been sort of, 22 years old. I'd be, was asked to be the captain, and that was a humbling experience. It's really interesting if you think about leadership in pro sport. The tendency is to put the C on your, not necessarily your leader, but your top player. And that's evolved, right? Like that's typically what happens. You put the C on the top player, and it's really important that player has a sense of how to lead. And I needed, what I wish I would have had, guys, back in the day. I wish I would have had a mentor. Somebody that would have come alongside and said, listen, I've made that mistake, don't do that. And so I was very thankful to be a captain at a young age.
Wow. Now talk about your journey of faith. When did you really get serious about your faith, and when did you make a decision about that?
I have, probably like all of us on this call, I have the greatest mom and dad in the world, and our family is amazing. But we were not a faith family. I mean, our Sunday mornings were filled with minor hockey. So, a lot of Canadian families probably, relate to that. And at the end of the day, something happened to me early. I'm in my early 20s. A very good friend of ours, Jean and Deanne Pronovo now. Jean's on the Capital team. He's an older player. I'm a younger player. And I remember it was a little flight from New York. It wasn't that long a flight, but we hit one of those big storms on the East Coast that come in, and the plane sort of dropped. I've flown a lot in my career. That doesn't happen often, but it's the old, you're wondering if it's going to come out of the tailspin. And it really shook us up. Some of the big tough guys, that always sat at the back of the plane, they were yelling out the name of Jesus. And for the first time in their life, it wasn't a swear word, right? Yeah. So, I got off the plane. I didn't get off the plane different. I just got off the plane curious. And I wondered, this is my simplistic mind. If the plane goes down, does Ryan go up?
There you go. Yeah.
Right? Like that's it. That's really it. And I got to a place where I wanted to understand more, because basically I was a North American kid, and our philosophy is if you work hard and you do good, you're as good as you can be, you're going to go to heaven. And that was ingrained, it's the Puritan philosophy, right? And I got thinking, well, how could that be though? Like, how do I know? Because when the plane goes down, like I've got 6 or 8 seconds to maybe make some sort of understanding or decision, but that's it. So I got off the plane. I went over to Jean Pronovo. Prony was one of these born again Christian guys, right? I had no idea. I thought that was, preachers on TV. I had no idea what that was. And, the cool thing I don't want to forget to say, guys, is there's one reason I went to Jean Pronovo, because I was watching Prony, and Prony loved Deanne. That's it.
Wow.
Right. When I wanted faith, when I wanted to see something real, I wanted to talk to somebody, that was real. I watched, and he loved his kids and he loved Deanne, and he didn't come home, off of the road trip with 4 little teddy bears, giving them to the kids because he felt guilty for what he did on the road. He was real. So Prony was awesome. I said, Prony, if the plane goes down, do I go up?
What did he say?
He said, Wally, I'm not going to tell you. Now, isn't this a great answer?
Wow.
Wally, I'm not going to tell you. And he threw me a New Testament. And he said, you read for yourself, kid. And I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We started going to Bible studies at Jean's place. Hockey Ministries International sort of, was connecting with us at that time. And basically, in a hotel room, before I'm having my pregame sleep in Edmonton, we're going to play Gretzky and the Oilers that night. Basically, I had come to the realization through the Word of God that Jesus was the Son of God.
Wow.
And if that was true, then I needed to take action. And I'm not a guy of faith. I didn't know I should kneel. I didn't know how to talk to God. I just lay in bed and I looked up and I said, hey, God, I'm done. I'm out. You're in. Jesus, I am so sorry for my sin. I had no problem with the sin part. And please come into my life. Be my savior. Take over my soul. You are my one way to the Creator. And with that, I actually, you guys will love this part. I actually had a little caveat, and I don't recommend that you guys or anybody else tries this. I said, God, if you're real. Ooh, I wouldn't try that one. If you're real, I said, change me. And that night I went out and I was supposed to be, I'm the captain of the team, swearing at the referee. It was my old buddy, Kerry Fraser. He blew a call. Brian Murray sent me out, talk to that referee. Normally it would be F and F and F and F and F and F. And I went out to Kerry Fraser. I looked at him. I was angry. And what came out of my mouth was, excuse me, Mr. Referee, could you give me the interpretation of that call?
And what did he say? He says, who am I talking to?
He said, Fraser, he'll remember this too. You guys should interview him. He said, if you say that again, I'll give you 10 minutes. He thought I was trying to play him
be smart, Alec. Yeah.
And you know what was cool, guys, is that was God's little way in his humor in my life. I basically haven't sworn since.
Interesting. Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. Hockey Ministries did play a role in that. And you find with hockey players, once you reach the pinnacle, you were looking to get there. And then all of a sudden you reach your goal and you think there's got to be more to this life and more. Was that part of it too?
I think so, Bruce. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love the competing and I love the team side of our game. I just, every part of it was so fun. I mean, in that first year, I thought I was overpaid and, I made $70,000 that year. I'm drafted number 2 in the world. Like, it was a different landscape, right? And but I think there's a feel. It doesn't matter where you are in life or what you do in life or who your family is. It really, God is pursuing us.
Yes.
And I think that at different points in our lives, he knows, right? Coaches push buttons.
Yep.
God knows the buttons to push in order to get our attention. And for me, I think I was in that right place, or at least he put me in that place for me to be ready for him.
There you go. And so one of the guys that you got to know, and when I was doing a bit of research, your best man, and you were best man for him, someone named Mike Gartner. And maybe you can talk about that friendship a bit.
Yeah, great friendship. Mike and I, he's one of these guys, and you guys have these friends where, you don't talk for 6 or 8 months and then boom, you pick right up. And like, you talk to him every week for the last year. Yeah. Mike's an amazing guy. We had a blast. We had a little house that we rented together in the early years. And we never bought a lawnmower. And the grass kept growing and growing, so we called it Little House on the Prairie.
That's awesome.
We didn't know when when this is 2 stupid kids, right? We didn't know when the garbage truck came, to pick up. So we just kept putting garbage bags in the garage, right? Oh my goodness, it was so bad. But Mike and I became very good friends. And what was cool is God had Mike on a journey, almost like the same tracks. Like he went down, one side, I went down the other side. And it was crazy because just as I'm ready to say, hey, Garts, I've sort of become one of these Jesus followers, you know. At the same time, Gart sort of said to me, hey, Wally, you know, I've sort of become one of these Jesus followers.
Wow.
And it was crazy how that sort of, you know, just sort of connected. And God was really working in both of our hearts.
Isn't that cool? It's so neat to see. So let's talk about the trade to the red, white, and blue. Did it catch you off guard when they were announced that you were traded to Montreal?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, I'm captain of the team there. David Poyle gets brought in as a new GM. You know, and I've just played out my contract, right? I'm on the option year of a contract, thinking, you know, I'm going to sign a contract there, and I'd love to play out my time in Washington. And then I got traded, and boy, that was, you know, Jenny, my wife Jenny, and I were married on the 5th of June and traded on the 5th of September.
Wow.
So, you know, here's Jen, like, welcome to the world of hockey, baby, right? Like, I go to training camp and she sells the house.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a really interesting time. The other thing, and I don't know if Bob and Steve know this, but I think Bruce does, is I was part of the worst trade in NHL history. And Rick Green and I were the worst part because they traded 2 of us for 4 Canadiens. And that was the headline in the Montreal Gazette that day when we landed.
Wow.
So when you get to Montreal and you see that headline, by the way, Rick Green, born in Belleville, Ontario, where we're from. So that's a cool kind of segue. But when you get there and you read that headline, how do you react to that? How does that motivate you?
Yeah, you know, I think it put a lot of, obviously there was a lot of pressure anyway, but it put a lot of pressure on Rick and I. You know, what was funny is Greenie, bless his heart, that, and you can ask him this, but I think as I remember, I think that he reacted differently than I did to that type of pressure, but we both underperformed for the next months. We were not very good. And Rick, I think, was not quite in the shape that they were hoping he would be coming to camp. And so he's, you know, he struggled there. And so it wasn't the start that we were hoping to have. You know, I ended up playing early on with Guy Lafleur and Doug Wickenheiser. So obviously when you play with guys like that, you're going to have, you know, good games. And I ended up having, you know, I was on the All-Star team that year. I had a really good season, but I always tell young athletes that, you know, words are important. Like John chapter 2, right? And John chapter 1, like he's the word. Jesus is the word. He becomes the word. He is the word. Everything is created by the word. And it's really hit me that words are fascinating and they're so important. And those words, worst trade in NHL history, really impacted my performance. And that was where I think I first got curious around things like resilience and things like mental toughness, right? Like what's the gap between talent and performance? And I think most of us would agree that it's the mental side of our game.
Wow. So, and you obviously turned it around, became an all-star that year. And your time in Montreal, you mentioned Guy Lafleur. Now, my understanding, you guys were roommates for a little bit?
Yeah. Guy was my first roommate, and a wonderful guy. He taught me everything I needed to know about being a pro without saying a word.
Wow.
Right? You just watched him. You know, you guys will want to know this. I mean, Flower not only, you know, was on the ice 35 minutes before any other player for every practice, but he would sit after practice in home games, and he would have this huge bag full of mail, right? And he didn't pay a secretary to sign his name on those hockey cards, right? Flower would sit there, he'd grab a coffee, and he'd sign every card, right?
Wow.
Lick the envelope, you know, put it in. Like I learned so much from watching him about how to be a pro athlete.
Wow. That's so cool. And in your time in Montreal, did you ever learn to speak French?
Oui.
Oui.
Je parle français, mais c'est difficile maintenant parce que je n'ai I don't have anybody to speak with. That's so,
that works.
So, yeah, so I love the French language, and I'm 62. One of my midterm goals is to be bilingual by the time I'm 65. Number one, I want to relearn the language. I could do an interview in French around hockey. I paid thousands of dollars to learn the language because I didn't listen at school. But I couldn't speak. If you wanted me to talk about things in science or something, I'd have no idea. Like dans le coin, in the corner, or c'est le but, it's a goal. Those are easy, right?
Give 110% with the
exactly
the hockey cliches. So when we were going through your stats, I couldn't help but notice your penalty minutes in Washington were 106, 150, 142. Your first season in Montreal went down to 40.
Yeah.
What was it? Was a different style in game or different role on the team?
Yeah, different role, different style. A lot of players in Washington challenged me. So we're in Philadelphia, playing against the Flyers 8 times in that division. And I'm the guy that's going to score goals, get assists, and fight. And so I was challenged a lot in those days. I just felt it was a different role. It was, I still had to play tough. It was interesting. I went from the shooter on the power play in Washington to the front net presence guy in Montreal. So a completely different role. And, people say, well, you had less power play goals. You had I'm fine with that, right? Like I wanted to be part of a great team and not, the sort of the signature guy on a great team. So my role very much changed.
It's interesting to note in those same years, Laurie Boschman had 575 penalty minutes. No, he didn't have that many. Did you ever? Yeah, he had quite a few. Did you ever have a fight with Boschy or any of your friends that you have now?
Yeah, I can't remember ever scrapping with Boschy. You can ask him. He's your buddy, Bruce. He'll tell you.
Yeah.
But Boschy and I came from the Western Hockey League, and you had to get used to it pretty quick there. One of my favorite stories is with big Stu Grimson. So obviously Stu's, a tough guy in the NHL, and he's a real solid Christian guy, awesome faith. And so I'm in my last year with the Vancouver Canucks, and back in the day, right, you had to grab somebody and pair up. So our 2 guys are fighting over there. And I go over, I got big Stu. I figure I'm safe here, right? Stu's my buddy, right? And I've got Stewie, and we're hanging on, and I make a mistake. I sort of look over at the guys scrapping, right? I shouldn't have done that. And Stu just sucker punches me. and he looks at me, and I'm hanging on, and we're gonna go. And he's got a big smile on his face, and he says, "Wally, I'll apologize in the summertime."
Oh, that's awesome. How do you, we asked a few people this before, like, how do you reconcile? It was said, Tim Burke said, if Jesus were playing sports, he'd be throwing brushback pitches and he'd be taking out runners at second base.
Yeah.
Taking out the second baseman. How do you reconcile playing tough in sports and your faith?
Wow. That's the question, right? And when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jesus, right? Like how should have I done it?
Yeah.
I think that Matthew 6:1 is the most the hardest verse for a professional athlete, because it says basically that if you play or live to receive applause from men and women, you will have no applause from your Father in heaven. And yet, what do we do as athletes?
Yeah.
We score goals, people get up, they applaud. And so, having so many people have said this, the crowd of one, right? That Jesus is in the stands, that I'm playing with a pure heart before him and for him, then anything could come my way that I could react to. And one of my great prayers, people say, well, what are you thinking in Montreal. It's such a vivid image. It's in Hockey Night in Canada, Saturday night. You're in the starting lineup, so you're on the blue line, and the national anthems are sung, and people have said to me, "What are you thinking? What are you saying to yourself? What do you?" And for me, that was my time to pray, and my prayer was, "Lord, protect my reactions." If I've got time to think about it and I have the mind of Christ and the heart of Christ, most times I'm going to react the way I want to. But when somebody sucker punches you in the head and you react, and that's normal, right? Fight, flight, freeze. So I used to ask him to protect my reactions in games. And at the end of the day, I was in these hockey ministries, hockey camps all summer, and these little kids would be watching Hockey Night in Canada, and I'm sharing Christ with them, and many of them are going, aren't you the guy that got in the big scrap, and so there was always this sort of connection. Final thought, though, there's a pastor that we were listening to over Zoom today, and I thought he put it so well. So John chapter 2, do you remember where Jesus not only whips the people out of the temple and the cows and the pigeons, and not only does he do that, but he actually makes the whip to do it, right?
Wow.
So that he wasn't reacting there. He had an hour to make a whip, right, and think about what he was going to do.
Yeah.
But what I loved about the sermon this morning is the young pastor, Mark Clark, said this. Jesus is not a safe God.
That's right.
Like we shouldn't be worshiping a safe. He's not safe.
Yeah.
Like he's a good God, but he's not a safe God. Right? He didn't say, "Oh, please get out of the temple and please don't sell those pigeons."
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
interesting to think of that way.
he not only made a whip, he took a whip.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say that he whipped men and women. It does say that he moved everybody out and turned over tables. And I just think that is a powerful thing, right? I think God respects and honors passion for him.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes we're not going to be safe, and hockey is not a safe game.
No, that's right. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Now you played your last couple of years in Vancouver, and the Vancouver Canucks are going through a real rough time now, but we hear they're on the upswing. A lot of the players are recovering, and that's good to hear. Talk about, when you go to Vancouver, that's your home base, and then all of a sudden, as hockey career comes to an end, where do you go after you're done? It's a lot of guys when they retire, it's now what? And just talk about your journey after hockey.
Yeah, thank you for that, guys. For me, it was not knowing. I mean, looking back, I probably made some big mistakes, but looking back, there's no mistakes in our Lord, right? I mean, I wasn't ready. I think very few people are, but I should have thought through it a little better. I mean, I had a couple of teams, Montreal. When I was traded to Vancouver, Serge Savard brought me in and said, "Listen, would you like to scout? Would you like to be an assistant coach? Would you like to be part of our organization?" And I wasn't ready for that. I still wanted to play. So Serge moved me to Montreal. And when I look back, Pat Quinn had the same talk with me. Would you like to, I don't know, coach in the minors? Would you like, and I didn't have a positive answer. I didn't have any answer. I said to Pat, "I'm not quite sure." So I really, if it was just from making money and staying in as a GM or whatever point of view, then I probably made a mistake. But I came out of the game and I started to broadcast right away. TSN, sort of came. It was Scott Moore, a wonderful guy, and he said, "Ryan, you're articulate. You speak well behind the microphone. You're just out of hockey. You know all the players. Why don't you come and do some broadcasting for us?" And so I started slow, and then really ramped up. And for 10 years, did a lot of broadcasting, TSN, Sportsnet, BC TV. And then I had a chance to work with Jim Robson. And Jim Robson is a great radio, guy for 25 years with the Canucks. Wonderful guy. So that was fun. What happened there too, guys, is I got curious. I really got to a place where, I loved the broadcasting, and then it gave me room to actually, dabble in a bit of business stuff. And I got curious and, sort of, was in a couple of businesses, lost a business, sort of went through the hard times. And I think every hockey player thinks they're coming out of hockey. It's businesses just like hockey, and I'll just work hard and everything's good. Yeah. Well, I learned about, Bruce, here's one for you guys. I learned about a really dirty word. It's called cash flow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I know that can come up, eh? Cash flow's a bit of an issue at times, right?
Right. And so I learned lots there. I sort of cut my, my nails on that. And then, really got excited about trying to connect professional sport, the principles, with what I call professional business. I went back and did a master's degree in leadership business at Trinity Western. And we really, for the last 20 to 25 years, the one constant in our life is we love, trying to help people grow and developing leadership capacity in companies. And that's really, every once in a while I get called back to do it in hockey, but 90% of the time it's with companies across North America. And so we love that stuff. We've built our own models. We've, written books, and it's just a curiosity. But let me just end with this. It is exactly the same as pro sport. And here's why. What wakes me up every morning is, why do some teams win and why do some teams lose when they have the same talent? What's the differentiator? And as many of you know, I mean, in business, we often call it, a positive culture, we call it leadership, we call it many things, but there's that differentiator, right, between people that are talented and skilled and people that win.
Yeah. Interesting. Is that why? What's the explanation for the Maple Leafs not winning since 1957? Any comments on that?
Bob, do I have to answer that, Bob?
Oh, Bobby. So, and talk about the transition out of the game. Your wife, Jenny, you and your wife, Jenny, have 5 children, and all of a sudden you're a hockey player and now you're out. What was the change like for your wife becoming a non-hockey wife?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I'll tell you why, because I wish Jen was right here and she'd tell you. Because here's what she would say. She said that she told me this. She said it was harder for her than it was for me. And the reason was that her identity for many years was being a hockey player's wife. Right? We were a hockey family. And she, she walked through the door like she didn't need a ticket, right? She went right to the wives' room and she had her own seats. And so her identity was as caught up as mine was. And I think that, I wish I would have understood that better as a husband, because I think I was struggling with my own stuff, right? Not recognizing that Jenny, had a struggle too.
Interesting. And now you're working with a lot of businesses. COVID-19 has really impacted everyone's business. And what's the one thing that that folks are struggling with, and what are you hearing from business leaders that is a good thing that's come out of COVID-19?
Yeah, it's so diverse right now. The Economist magazine said there's 3 types of businesses coming out of COVID. There's the businesses that are surfing. I mean, they've never been better. And Bruce, I know your business is really doing well. Then you've got these other businesses that are surfing. Then there's swimming. So some businesses are okay, right? They're hanging in there and they're hoping to get through it. And then there's some businesses that are sinking. And it's so true. We've had a huge pivot in our business. We've gone from 100 in-person training sessions in 2019 to 1 in-person training session in 2020. And I've just finished about 85 half-day training sessions over Zoom with corporate America. So we've really had to change the way that we do things. Couple thoughts. I think that COVID does affect different businesses in different ways. And yet I think people are very similar. And one thing that's hitting me is I see people that are needing to rely on what sports calls mental toughness. And for me, guys, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, mental toughness, as I'm starting to explore it and see it, is much different than resilience. Resilience is part of it, but mental toughness is not only, the mental side, right? It's the preparation side, and it's the post-game side, and it's choosing our thinking versus reacting to our thinking. And so this idea of mental toughness, I see that people and executives who have sort of gone through the hard times, you think of 2008, you think of other times, we're building this capacity to increase our mental toughness. For me, worst trade in NHL history was one of the things that really grew me.
Motivated you. Interesting.
Right? It grew me. So I think that Bruce is the one thing that I see, and we're starting to build processes to help companies increase the capacity of their mental toughness.
People will learn from this. I know as a business, I look back over my 32 years in business, and there's certain things that the year I can do, the date, the time, and COVID definitely has been one of those. Speaking of mental toughness, Stevie, you disappeared on us, but you're back. So
I had a moment there. I love the technology conversation that Ryan was going on. I was like, my technology, maybe I can have Ryan come help me with my technology.
BC and Alberta, you guys get along, right? There's a big West out there, right?
I guess TELUS has helped us out, be friends now, but we're working on it.
So before we go, and thanks for tuning in with us tonight. This has been a great talk. The one thing that people may not know, that you had a bit of an acting job, and you were involved in a movie, The Miracle, and maybe tell a little bit about that project.
Yeah, that was really fun. And for anybody that hasn't seen Miracle, run right out and rent it or buy it, because I get residuals.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. So what did you do in the project, and did you advise, and then you had a little cameo as well?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. No, Disney called and asked if Miracle was shot in Vancouver, Canada. And so, they asked me to be part of their core group that put the movie together. Excuse me. I have no idea about movies. I have nothing to do with the movies. And I've never been behind the scenes of a major motion picture. But I was really proud of our team in the way we put the hockey together. And it's one of the few videos. Typically, what I was told is that Hollywood would hire the actors, and then they'd try to get them, they'd get somebody to teach them how to skate. So, when you think of Mighty Ducks and right, like, you can always tell if it's an actor trying to skate. What they did with Miracle is so cool, and I'm so proud of Gavin O'Connor, the young director, is other than maybe the top 4 or 5 players and coaches, he actually took hockey players and he taught them how to act.
Isn't that cool? Eh?
Yeah. And so we were very proud of Miracle. We had 125 plays animated on my computer. And so, we'd come down to shooting. We practiced for 2.5 months. We shot in about 3 weeks. And then, I would go to center ice, and I'd hold the computer up, right? And I'd say, okay, play 35, guys. And we'd done it enough that, all they had to do was watch, okay, break out, regroup. Yeah, got it. We're coming up the left side. We're going to get a shot on net. And so the reason that we had to do some of that, some of it is just scrimmage, but we had to honor history. So Mark Johnson's goal at the end of the first period, you've got to replicate it, right? It's got to look like Mark Johnson's goal. And our guys, I give our players all the credit. They nailed it. And so I'm very proud of the hockey side. Finally, I didn't know this was going to happen, but Gavin O'Connor said, "Hey, Ryan, you've done a great job. I want to get you in the movie." And so he made me the head referee between the US and Soviet Union, so in the big game. And I ended up with 4 lines in the movie. And that took me from a pretty nominal salary. You get 4 lines in a movie, and all of a sudden, you know, you're quadrupling your salary. So that was awesome. And just for Bruce, the most important line in the whole movie Miracle is, "Come on, Herb, get your guys to the face-off."
There you go. Well, we'll watch that. You know what? I own a copy of that. I've got it on VHS here. So I've got it. No, I actually got it on DVD.
Oh, good man. Good man.
Yeah, I'll get it out and watch it. And thanks. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with you, Ryan, to learn more about your coaching, to learn more about your speaking, where can they get in touch with you?
Thank you guys very much. RyanWalter.com is probably the easiest place. So just RyanWalter.com, and send me. I like when people just, you know, send me a little contact form, and it can be for anything. We've had, CEOs where we're doing tons of work for with them contact us there. But, you know, we've also had hockey fans that have just sort of sent a note and say, "Hey, I'd love you to sign my hockey card. Where can I send it to?" So we're wide open. We love people. We love to try to find ways to add value to people. RyanWalter.com.
That's awesome. Our time has come to an end.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
Well, I want to thank Ryan Walter for joining us tonight. It's been a privilege to have him on the edge of Tom Foolery, hearing your story. And we encourage all our listeners to get out and check out his website. You are the author also. We didn't talk about that. You've written more than the Gospels. You've written 5 books. Is that right?
We got 2 more on the go. Can I share these with you? You're gonna like this first.
Yeah, go for
Number
it.
1 is going to be on this idea of mental toughness. Okay. Number 2 is I'm really excited about the questions Jesus asked.
That's awesome. That is awesome. No, you can share as much as you want. We went to finish the show with Boschman the one time, and he talked for another 10 minutes after. So.
4 more stories.
He had story after story. Listen, for the edge of Tom Foolery, my name is Bruce Mackey.
I'm Bob Morris.
I'm Steve Height.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. Have a great weekend. Thanks to our guest, Ryan Walter.